The Forsaken Valley one was actually from the round of 64. So in other words, I had met Liquid Corbalt in the brackets of the top 64 for that game. But it's not the one that won the voting, so we're not going to load up into that game. Instead, this is one that was played on the ladder on Lost Temple. So again, we had the ladder phase before the actual tournament phase, and this one would have been played on Lost Temple between the two of us as we were trying to qualify to make that round of 64 tournament. For those asking, the polls are essentially if you go to the Team Liquid thread under the schedule, there are polls underneath the player choice show spoilers. You can see at the bottom of the stream area a link to where that is, or somebody could possibly, or I post that into chat. So yeah, so this one will just be a ladder game on Lost Temple. So go ahead and load that up. So in this game, we have as the blue Protoss Liquid Corbalt, and we have as the yellow Protoss myself as playing the nickname UJ Knight, my Smurf. I'll go ahead and reveal the entire map for the time being. You can see this older version of Temple that existed that we were playing on. Again, this was a ladder match that we were all trying to qualify in the CompUSA $20,000 tournament, trying to make that top 64 for the bracket stage. And even if you finished in the top 100 in the ladder, you get $50. So even if you weren't that confident in your abilities, you still want to try to get in the top 100 for that small prize at least. I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the players here to show off exactly what information existed at that time for it. Also, let me go ahead and make sure I have the right thing here. Yeah, this is a little bit better. I had the wrong color for Liquid Cobalt. So Cobalt's info. I don't know a ton about him, unfortunately. He was a member of Team Liquid at the time. It was a very popular StarCraft community site that has grown out of that team. He finished 6th place in CompUSA's Million Man LAN that was held a few months after this event. So a lot of top American players were at that, and he ended up getting, I think, $300 for that 6th place finish there. His average APM of the games that I have of him is 130. And in addition to that, he is playing in this particular game with an APM of 122. So it looks like in this game so far, he's going for a 9-gate, 10-gate. So a very aggressive build coming out from Cobalt. So he is going to be pumping out Zealots, actually. 9-gate, 10 gates actually were somewhat popular at the time. Meanwhile, I'm going for a more traditional build, going for the Gateway and then the Vespian Gas. So continuing on about Cobalt, there are no photos of him I can find online, so unfortunately I do not know much about what he looked like. All the photos that had links are all dead, so if anybody has a photo, feel free to post it, but I don't know anything about his... I don't have a whole lot of details about this player from that time period. So that is Corbalt. He's also somebody that I would meet in the round of 64 in the tournament itself, and was a very top level player, somebody who a lot of people had high expectations of him. And then there is myself, the stepping stone player, somebody who would place in a lot of tournaments but would never actually win anything. And generally, after you beat me, you know you had kind of made the entrance in the top of the BW scene, as I was somebody that could compete, but was never somebody that was going to give a top player really any trouble. But I did do 4th place in a tournament called I2E2 that was in New York in the very old days before replays. Now we have some battle going on here. So you notice here that Corbalt is trying to use this probe to get a few extra hits in to make sure that his Zealot wins. Again, going for that very aggressive 9-gate, 10-gate, which I have spotted now with my probe. Trying to do as much damage with this very aggressive opening that he has here. In the Million Man Land event that he was in, the one that he finished 6th place in, I finished 10th for I think $100. So he also finished higher than me then. So a little bit of a quite an impressive tier player here. He's at the top of the scene himself. So here we go, some Zealot micro going on. Basically trying to see who can pick up who's Zealots. Corbalt using that extra probe to get a few extra hits in consistently as we try to make sure we kill a Zealot without losing one ourselves, to allow those shields to regenerate, to allow that Zealot to still be useful in future battles. So Corbalt at this point in time is all in with the Zealot attacks. Trying to do as much damage with them as possible. And we're going to be trying to again, kill each other's Zealots while keeping ours alive as best as possible. And it looks like we've basically traded evenly. Both these Zealots are about the same. He's still streaming in with his. Has not advanced beyond producing Zealots. Just all in with the 9-gate, 10-gate at the moment. I, meanwhile, do have 2 gates up now myself. This Vespene not having been used so far, but it has been piling up, and I am getting the Proto-Cybernetic Core in order to get some Dragoons out. So there's some micro again, pulling back the weak one, getting my weak one as I tried to move forward. You can see here again, pulling out that weak one, trying to force through on the side to split out the attacks. It's basically a micro battle now, a raw micro battle to try to see whose units can do the most damage and who will make the mistakes. Like there, just making a mistake, taking a bunch of extra damage on that Zealot I did not have to take. So I'm having to pull my probes now. I'm now below on Zealots. His consistent stream, he's pulled ahead on the slight micro skirmishes that we've been having up to now, as each of us tries to keep a unit alive. I'm adding on a 3rd gateway to try to produce more units. Corbalt has also had a 3rd gateway built. He's just all in on these Zealots, continually building more and more, not getting any of his Vespene gas whatsoever. It's looking like, so he has the slight advantage. He's going to be killing the ones that are mining the Vespene gas. I don't have quite enough to kill him. I'm just trying to distract him at the current moment. And more Zealots are coming out. Looks like the probes are coming out from behind, so I'm basically trying to surround him on both sides, prevent his Zealots from retreating while getting extra hits with the probes in to try to finish off this attack. And it looks like I will barely hold. 2 more Zealots from Corbalt arriving now. Now it's 4 on 3. 4 on 3. Dragoon is out to help even the odds, but Dragoons by themselves will lose to Zealots unless they're properly microed. So this Dragoon is being pushed back after its shields have been used as a blockade. Now dancing around with that Zealot, using the Dragoon's ability to fire while that dances around to be able to kill it. And that Zealot looks like it will fall. It will not fall, apparently. So Dragoons now versus Zealots. I've made the transition now in units. Corbalt is still all in on his Zealot attack. So it's going to come down to whether or not I can dance around these Dragoons and whether or not he can split up his Zealots to prevent me from doing so. Meanwhile, with the Zealot attack going on, he is attacking my probes, trying to finish them off, getting a few probe kills with that Zealot in my mineral line. This Zealot has successfully killed 1 Dragoon. I do see the mineral line going down, go to handle that. Another Zealot is out to attack the Dragoons, and it looks like they will trade 1 for 1. So we have still Zealots pouring in from Liquid Corbalt. That's all he has so far, is more and more Zealots. He's getting a Forge now, and it looks like he might be going to do something else besides just pour more Zealots. Now that I've stabilized with Dragoons, Dragoons in large numbers will kill Zealots because you can dance the Dragoons. And even though we weren't very good at dancing them, we were good enough that it would work. So I'm going to take more damage than I should, but at this point in time, it's just going to become more and more futile for him to continue to send his Zealots in. So his zealots are now retreating home. As I said before, the attack has been stopped. He has started an expansion, and the forge that he built, he has no Vespene gas to research upgrades. He's basically going to try for an expansion using photon cannons to hold the expansion against any type of a Dragoon counterattack. So he's going to try to get himself back into this game by just simply getting more resources than me now that his initial aggressive move has not panned out. Realizing the Zealot Swarm has stopped, I'm moving out with my Dragoons now to explore to see what's going on outside my base. And likely I'm out for blood. I realized that he's only built Zealots up to now. He likely doesn't have any tech. He doesn't have Dragoons himself. He doesn't have Reavers. He doesn't have Dark Templars. The only thing he has is a bunch of slow Zealots. And I don't want him to get Zealot speed. So the only way that I figure he can get back into this is by getting Zealot speed, and his Zealots then become a lot more effective against my Dancing Dragoons. So I want to try to hit him before any type of Zealot speed timing is possible. He's going to try to sandwich me now, try to make my Dancing and Dragoon micro much more difficult. But they're still slow Zealots, and the Dragoons are still faster. So I can basically move and fire, move and fire, move and fire. And while I'm not doing it very well, I'm doing it just well enough to do more damage to him than he's doing to me. So again, this is myself versus Corbalt in the CompUSA 20K ladder. Both of us trying to qualify for the top 64 from that ladder to compete for the $20,000 in prizes. And I'll bring back up the information cards for those who want to see it one more time. This was Liquid Corbalt, what I know about him, and other people can maybe expand upon it. His major accomplishment being the 6th place at the CompUSA Million Man LAN that happened in Kentucky a few months later that ended up getting him $300. With an average APM at the time 130, a bit low for the top of the American scene, but still pretty respectable. And then myself, the one who's playing as the Yellow Protoss, having done 4th place in an old tournament prior to replays, prior to even, I think, Brood War at I2E2 New York. Might have been, I can't remember if it was before or after Brood War. My memory of that event is much more cloudy. And then 10th place at that same GameFixx Million Man LAN, so a worse placement than Corbalt had gotten at the same type of competitive event. With an average APM my replays of 119, so pretty low on the APM scale. And this is a photo from that Million Man LAN of myself again that I showed off once before that I was able to find on the internet. And nothing of Corbalt, so I don't know what Corbalt looks like, and I don't remember who he was from the Million Man LAN event either. So it looks like I have shuttled up some Dragoons now. So I realized that I have the tech advantage, and again, this LT is not very well balanced, so you are able to do a lot of things onto it in certain positions that you may not be able to do as effectively as others. So actually, this one is one of the better ones. You can only hit 1 or 2 patches. Some of the other positions here, you can hit many more. Well, as over here, there's even more space between where the ledge is and where the minerals are. But I'm preventing him from mining at his expansion now, getting out my own expansion. Trying to utilize the tech advantage, the fact that I have higher tech units than he did when he took his expansion, and that he's relying on these photon cannons for defense only. He, meanwhile, is trying to tech up to a robotics facility that will give him access to dropships himself and allow him to take out my Dragoons that are stopping him from mining and get Reavers, which are very important in this matchup. In the PvP matchup during this time, the style was pretty much always to go for Reavers. And this is also a very important position that I have down here. So you notice here that I have all of my Dragoons in a very nice conclave, but I also have 4 Dragoons up here. And this is very, very crucial for any type of choke like this, because if he comes in for an attack, the ones down here will get their micro confused and will try to attack the Dragoons on the higher ledge altitude that they have less chance of hitting. And they will basically block anything behind them. So while as his forces up here are ones that I can then converge on, the ones down here will be confused, attacking ones they have less chance of hitting. And I also be able to get a better conclave because I kind of am making a more circular shape than like this compared to his single entry point. So very important to do in such a defensive position is to try to use everything you can, all the altitude you can to your advantage. especially because while it is possible to individually micro it to fix the Dragoons who they're attacking down here, it's just so APM intensive that most players, at least during this time, and probably still in modern days, would not be able to accomplish that. So here comes a Zealot drop. I'm not actually microing this, so this shuttle is not being targeted. This drop had already done its deed, though. It had been just trying to keep him from mining, trying to allow me to get ahead in the mineral resource count. So it's not a big loss that that was cleaned up. And it looks like I'm now going to push out. So seeing that he is now able to mine from his expansion, I decided that now is probably the time to do so, because I've been mining more minerals for him for a while now. So I likely have the advantage, and I do. 103 to 83 resources. So these Reavers are going to come out. His army is still mostly Zealots from earlier. The Reaver shots are not very great, but they're still doing okay work on his units. He's having to focus down the Reaver, and while he's focusing down the Reaver and moving forward, the Dragoons are getting a ton of free shots in on him. So it's looking more and more like this mineral only is going to fall, and it's looking like he's on the back foot now. His unit count is 59 to 103. I'm doubling his the number of units that he has available to him. I do have observers, so even DTs are not going to save him at this point. Making sure that these observers here are mostly just there to ensure that there is no comeback mechanism, because if I didn't have them there, the DTs may actually allow him to repeal this attack and possibly gain time to stabilize and get back into the game. So it looks like that expansion is going to go down. I'm not actually going to charge up this ramp here. So you may say, well, you just killed this expansion. You obviously have the edge. Why aren't you attacking up and just killing them off? It's because of the fact that defensive positions, especially on maps like this, are very strong. And especially on this one here, there's only a small ramp to go up, that I don't want to have to risk a bad engagement. I realize that I had the expansion. I'm ahead. He has no expansions. I can just simply sit back, let him mine out his main, and just simply have so many units that when he does eventually move out, I can just crush it. So part of being a good StarCraft player is just realizing when you have the advantage now, but you shouldn't take a risk by trying to push it forward anymore. You've gained your ground. You know that there is no real way your opponent can come back. You just want to play it safe. Don't take any unnecessary risks, and wait until you can get the good engagement that you need in order to close out the game. Very important. One of the earlier things that my brother and I did that ended up sabotaging us in many early tournaments was just getting that initial advantage and then going for the kill, and then ending up the opponent holding that from their defensive position and coming back into the game and defeating us. And you'll notice here I'm just simply checking the island, because again, I'm not 100% sure that he doesn't have an island expansion, so I'm just making sure that there indeed is nothing else that he has that could be producing resources for him. So basically now it's just going to come down to making sure that I macro well, that I continue building out units. I wait until I think that it's a... I left a Dragoon here to make sure it doesn't take the island. Wait until I think it's a good opportunity to crush any expansion he's taking, like this one here. And then just use superior numbers, as I now have 115 to his 60 food count. He's having to do long distance mining. His main is out. He has a single mineral patch for 108 minerals. And using most of his resources at this point on High Templar, because again, he wants to be spending as little amount of minerals as possible. Investment in gas is actually cheaper for him to spend at the current moment. And meanwhile, I'm expanding again, taking the 6 o'clock position. And producing Templar myself. in a large quantity. Researching Storm, so I am behind on that. And his expansion is up. Ideally, I would probably attack before his expansion was all the way up, but I think that I'm just playing it extra safe, just macroing a bit more and just keeping this lead that I currently have. Probably a bit too safe for this current time period. Probe will go down. And it looks like things are just going to stabilize and wait for things to happen again. So we had a very action-filled opening where Corbalt opened up with a 9-gate, 10-gate. Very aggressive Zealot and Zealot micro. Which ended up with me getting Dragoons out and then dancing the Dragoons around. And now into this late game here where I have a mostly Dragoon Reaver and Templar army, the end game for Protoss. And I even have DTs added to the mix. You can see here I just picked up a few of his Stormers, sending this DT in, realizing that he probably doesn't have observers himself. Taking out his back line. He's doing a very good job on defense. Quite well. So the initial push off by him is actually holding quite strongly, but more reinforcements are starting to stream in. And it's looking like this will probably be the end of this expansion once again. He has a DT now himself, returning the favor of my previous DT. But I don't think it matters. The DT is not going to be able to do enough damage anymore. And I do have an observer now in play that has come up and now spots the DT to destroy it. So the expansion's gone. His main base is mined out. He has no other expansions. I even have the Dragoon here to prevent him from ever having taken the island. His food is down to a measly 13. I'm streaming into his main now and realizing that there's nothing in his main that could possibly push me back, possibly defeat my army. There's no Reavers there that will be shooting down on my army as I try to climb up it, or Dragoons that may be trying to ambush them. And from that, it looks like it's going to be GG. So that was a PvP of the time against Liquid Corbalt. One of the ways that PvPs would often go. I'd say about 25% of them had early aggression like that. So in other words, one player would attempt to test the other player with some type of early Zealot attack. The other 75% were generally traditional Goon and Reaver battles. And almost nobody ever went to anything else other than that as their initial starting point for that matchup. So the next game on the lineup is going to be against a player that has been mostly forgotten to time, named Ware, real name Daniel or Dan Murphy. This player would actually finish at the 5th, 6th place at the WCG 2001 Grand Finals. So a very high placement in the international finals for that year. Still losing out to a Korean, of course. But still a very impressive showing. I think one of the deepest showings of an American for any of the early WCG years that I can recall.